Hello, supers! This week on Paano Ba To, I am sharing a clip from my sit-down interview with Korean-American singer, producer, podcaster, and actor Eric Nam. We spoke about some of the most asked questions on Paano Ba To, and basically our conversation ended up with us figuring out life. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
You were really in business, or you got an opportunity to start in business, but then chose to go the entertainment route and then eventually start your own business and eventually branch out, and now you're acting as well. So I was curious about those hops because I get this question a lot also on the podcast about how do you know which to choose? How do you know it's time to take the next step? What does that look like for you? And do you have like guiding principles or values that you follow when making big decisions?
I think for me, like, the reason I do so much is because I'm naturally curious. I'm also very ambitious. And so much of my career, I was told it's not possible. You can't do it. It's not going to work. It's going to fail. Don't do it. And every time and time again, I wanted to prove people wrong. So even with Dive, people are like, this is not going to work. Even my career, I remember my first label head, president, CEO, I was like, this is the stuff I want to do. It's like, it's not going to work. And like, it's impossible. And I remember being like, watch me. I'm going to make it work. And so I'm a type of person that I think I understand if everything we tried everything and it doesn't work, we tried our best and we can move on. But I don't like saying no and giving up without even having tried it. Music, even my mom, when I first got on a TV show, she was like, you're finally going to know how bad of a singer you are and you're going to quit. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, Mom, watch me. And then I made it work. Every time it's like, let me prove it to you. And so there's something inside of me that I'm going to do it in spite of you. And there's an ambition that I feel like I have to make it work somehow. And if it doesn't, it's fine, but at least I know I tried. And so that's like the first thing. The second thing is, I think because I have that curiosity and that drive, there are so many things that I want to do. And it's just a matter of, I want to try it all. What's the right timing? So for me, it's always been when things start to get too comfortable, when things stop being a challenge, and when things get boring, I'm like, it's time to move. It's time to move on and do something different or to completely change it up. And so even with music, like that's when the acting thing happened last year. For years, I was like, I don't want to act. I'm not going to act because if I do it, I want to be emotionally, mentally ready. I also want to be good. I don't want to be bad. That's like my biggest fear. And then I just wanted to be the right role because my first film that I actually got cast in was in 2016, and we couldn't do it because of scheduling issues. But since then, I had just always just like one day, and then I was like, this is the moment, let's do it. And then we went for it. So I think those have always been the two things. It's like natural ambition, curiosity, and then timing when I get bored or that kind of thing.
I get a sense that you have a very strong sense of self and of your voice, because you mentioned that even your mom had doubts and then your record label had doubts. I guess I was curious, how did you come about being so confident in that voice when in fact a lot of us struggle with the outside forces, right? Of telling you this is what you can do, this is not you, stay in the box, etc. How did you, I guess, develop that?
I'll start off by saying that I have the same doubts and the fears that anybody else does. Like, I have this album coming out and I'm terrified, you know? But for me, I think it's because I spend a lot of time alone. As active and as workaholic and social as I am, I spend just as much time alone. It doesn't have to be like on a resort or in a mountain or in a something like meditating. That's not it. But I spend a lot of time alone and I have a lot of conversations with myself. And I think a lot of those questions are, what is going to make me happy? Why am I stressed? And how do I get rid of the stress? What makes me bored? Anytime I'm feeling an emotion, I really try to feel it to the max and say, this is what you're feeling. How do I feel better, or how do I move away or like embrace it and get to a better place? And having those conversations with myself on a regular basis, I think gave me an understanding of how to adapt to and perceive the world around me. Because of that, I have such a good understanding of how I function and how I work and how I think, that if I am in a situation, I can make decisions knowing that that decision is best for me personally. And I think that's what has been the thing. The other thing is growing up, I dealt with a lot of like bullying and like a lot of adversity. And so it was always, how do I survive? How do I make sure that I end up on top somehow, or like not under like the bullying of other people?
Or not like resentful and an
Yeah.
angry person.
Yeah. And so I think I just spent a lot of time trying to work that stuff out. So that paired with the time that I spent alone to really think about what I am, who I am, and being intentional, I think has let me be very confident. Because I'm sure you know, as a creative person, when we're making something, it's never been done before. These songs that I'm putting out have never been made before. The movie that I'm doing has never been made before. So like, we have to just trust our gut and our instinct to say, this is going to be good. And it's going to be good because I believe in it and I worked really hard to get it there. It's scary and I still have doubts. And I'm like, is this good enough? Is anybody going to like it? Is anybody going to listen to it? And it's terrifying. But to answer that, I came to the understanding that I have to find value in the process and enjoyment of me creating stuff, and not just from what other people think of it.
Yeah.
And that's where I find like this entire process to be very rewarding.
Yeah. So many things you said, I super agree with. And I think it's so important that you emphasize the importance of alone time, quiet time. I just gave this talk the other day in a school, and they were senior high school students. So I assume that everyone is super Gen Z and very much a digital native, right?
Yeah.
And I was explaining to them that if you don't have time off your phone, it's like people's thoughts are in your head 24/7.
Yeah.
And you're sort of lost. Is this really what I think? Or is it just because 10 people I saw on my feed think this way? That's why I think I feel this way.
Yeah.
And so I love that you practice that, like alone time.
I love going on trips by myself. It can be lonely, but that's the point. When you are lonely and things are quiet is when you have the deepest, realest conversations with yourself, is what I think. And I agree with you with being so on digital media all the time. What happens is you're not actually thinking. You're just absorbing and like reacting to crazy memes and viral clips and just eye candy, which is like to a certain degree fine. But I think you have to decompress and process what you are watching and looking at. And like the other thing is reminding yourself that not everything is real. A lot of that stuff is fake. And it's only going to get faker and faker, particularly with AI. And these algorithms and the content, they're created to really alter the way you think. And so I think having as much time independent of that is very important.
Yeah, so how do you balance that? Because I believe that in our line of work, we have to like check it out to see what people are talking about, what people care about, enough to know what's going to sell or what people are consuming, to be aware.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like that quiet time that you were saying. So how do you balance that?
I don't love like TikTok or stuff. Like it's too much for me. So naturally, I don't spend a lot of time on it. I do it mainly for work. So if it's work, then I'm like, okay, this is work, and I'm doing it to promote something or whatever. And that's just like the game that we have to play, unfortunately. But I think it's about balancing like having time online, but also just like hanging out with friends or having interesting discussions or listening to podcasts where you don't have to literally be watching something. And I love watching movies. I love watching TV shows. Like there are so many different ways to get inputs that are inspiring creatively that aren't just stuck to social media. I'm naturally an introvert, but I have seasons where I'm like, okay, I have to go like just meet people and just talk to them. Yeah. And even if I have no idea what they're talking about, I'm going to just like be like, okay, cool. And then like expose myself to new things. That to me has actually been very interesting. Like, especially for example, like the world of art, fine art and paintings and sculptures. Like I know nothing about it, but I was like, you know what? I want to invest my time and energy in understanding artists' perspectives and their creative process, how this works. So over the past like 2-3 years, I've spent a lot of time with painters and sculpture creators and ceramicists, completely different from what I do, but to understand their perspective and their stories in a different medium has been very enlightening to me.
Right. You know what? When you were talking, I was like, what a semi-parallel life, because I'm also very much an introvert.
Are
so
you?
I guess we're
Okay.
introverts who found ourselves in very extroverted industries. And to your art point, so my husband just got into painting or just pursued really like as a visual artist career the past 4 years. Prior to that, I also knew nothing about art. So I super was able to relate to what you said, that even if it has nothing to do technically with like the line of work that I do, just finding out the creative process and how the minds work of other creatives in whatever field that is. I feel it has fueled and inspired a lot of the work that I do. So same as you consume other art to be able to pour into
Create your own.
yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you were saying that, I just made me think of like, oh, the other part of my life that I think the